Good evening and welcome everyone to day 7 of the 8-day online national conclave on dialogues in English studies, contemporary approaches to pedagogy, research, and practices. I'm delighted to begin the session and look forward to another day of meaningful conversations, critical reflections, and engaged learning. It's my privilege to welcome a presiding speaker for today's session, Dr. Madangi V, Assistant Professor of English, PSGR Krishnamal College for Women, Coimbatore. Dr. Matangi is widely admired for her diligence, keen eye for detail, and her generous dissemination of knowledge. A committed academic and an inspiring mentor, she is known for her constant engagement with students and her unwavering dedication to her discipline. She brings both rigor and care to her teaching and scholarly practice, making her a source of guidance and motivation for many. On a personal note, I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity to have studied under her, and I thank her sincerely for kindly agreeing to preside over today's session despite having other schedules already made for the day. Please join me in welcoming a warm welcome to Dr. Madangi V. Ma'am, I welcome you to share a few words.
Thank you, dear Kavya, for the warm welcome. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, good evening, all of you. A warm welcome once again for the 8-day National Conclave on Dialogues in English Studies, Contemporary Approaches to Pedagogy, Research and Practice, organized by CREATE, the Ed Hub. So, at the outset, my heartfelt congratulations to Dr. Kavya, the founder and CEO of CREATE Ed Hub. I'm so happy even to tell it out aloud because Kavya has always been very dear to my heart. She is associated with our college right from her UG days. Until her PhD, she studied at KCW, and there have been a number of occasions when we have closely worked with each other. And at all times, I have been in constant awe of this child, so young, but still, no, with a very calm demeanor, but then with such clarity of thought. If she takes up some work, she will always see that it is pulled through, that too with perfection. So I have admired her, and it is really not a wonder that this child, she has been able to start a venture like this, and it's been quite recent. And from what I get to know, it's highly successful as well. In fact, our current students are beneficiaries as well because they are now interns at the Ed Hub, and I see them making good progress. So, once again, dear Kavya, our illustrious alumna, I'm very happy to associate with you. And when Kavya told me that they were organizing this 8-day national conclave, naturally, I knew that she will put her heart and soul into it. And when I saw the brochure, I did understand that no, it was interdisciplinary, there was inclusivity, and there was also emerging discussions on all sorts of critical approaches. No wonder, because Kavya happens to be the organizer, right? And especially today's session, gender and sexuality in Indian horror film and television. It is such a fascinating topic, actually. My congrats to the convener as well as the speaker for having chosen this topic. See, horror is basically a cultural text. If you see, horror is a space where all our fears and desires are negotiated, especially in the Indian context. If you see horror, it is always entangled with, say, women's bodies, our desires, sexual transgressions, sexual desires, not just that, family code, honor, code of conduct, so on and so forth. So it's very, very powerful actually. And if you study, say, horror in detail, you will get to understand how female desires are regulated. Also, come to understand how deviations on the part of the female are punished through, say, monstrosity or death. So it's a very powerful mode of study. And very recently, I watched this movie Subham on this OTT platform. It's a Telugu movie. I'm sure at least some of you must have watched the movie. It is a comic horror genre movie. I'm not going to go into the details about the movie, and I'm making a reference to it. Why? Because, say, in recent times, especially after the coming of OTT, so much has changed. Because when earlier, when we used to watch movies, we go to theaters, we had this censor board. But now this firewall is not there, is it not? All we have is just, we are just one click away. You just take your remote button and you just click on. Immediately, you have this very wide variety of discourses which is not censored at all. So I think at this point of time, it is highly crucial that we have discussions on topics like this, which concern gender, especially female sensualities and desire. So once again, I am sure Dr. Arpita will do great justice to the topic. I have known Arpita for quite some time. We have not met in person. In fact, we have been associated. We were co-participants in an online refresher program that was conducted quite a while ago. So after that, I invited Arpita to give a lecture in our college through online platform, and she did such a great job. She is a wonderful speaker, an eloquent speaker, and I'm sure she'll do a great job today. So, Arpita, I'm happy to connect with you once again today. My best wishes to you and to all the participants as well. So, on a closing note, what I would like to say is horror permits you to ask uncomfortable questions. And I think it is the right time to ask these questions as well. I just hope you all thrive on these discussions. Once again, my best wishes to all the participants. Kavya, a special word of congratulations to you. Though I may not be able to continue in the program, I will listen to the lecture later, Kavya.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Congrats all the best. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for your very kind words, ma'am.
Thank you,
And
Babaji.
thank you for amazingly setting the tone for today's session. It's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Arpita Ghosh, Assistant Professor of English at Ram Nanda Centenary College, Purulia, West Bengal, to the session. Ms. Ghosh's academic and pedagogical work is deeply rooted in contemporary concerns within the humanities, particularly at the intersection of post-colonial studies, ecological fiction, gender studies, and the Anthropocene debate. Her research reflects a sustained engagement with questions of climate justice, climate resilience, and multi species coexistence, foregrounding the agency of the dispossessed and the non human. What makes her scholarship especially compelling is its grounding in lived context, particularly in Purulia, where her professional practice and personal engagement intersect meaningfully with questions of indigenous knowledge systems, cohabitation, and women led perspectives. An accomplished teacher and researcher, Ms. Ghosh has taught a wide range of undergraduate courses spanning the history of English literature, ecological fiction, Renaissance drama, romantic poetry, Indian English poetry, and popular literature. She is also an active contributor to academic discourse with publications in reputed journals and edited volumes, and has presented her research at several national and international conferences, such as her recent one to Japan. In addition to her teaching and research, she plays a significant institutional role as the coordinator of the Internal Quality Assurance Cell, convener of the Women's Cell, program officer of the NSS unit, and a member of the editorial board of a college journal. Her work consistently reflects a commitment to inclusive pedagogy, critical inquiry, and socially responsive scholarship, values that resonate strongly with the spirit of this conclave. In this session, Ms. Arpita Ghosh invites us to enter the unsettling yet revealing terrain of Indian horror. drawing on recurring figures such as the female apparition, the predatory masculine presence, and menacing force rooted in land and lineage. The talk examines how horror narratives encode deeply embedded social anxieties. Rather than reading ghosts and monsters as merely supernatural entities, the session approaches them as symbolic expressions of fear surrounding women's mobility, gendered violence, sexuality, caste, class structures, and inherited trauma. So, using these lenses of gender and sexuality studies, the talk will argue that female marginalized and queer bodies often become sites upon which transgression, desire, and social control are projected. I do not want to give away too much, but I'm really delighted to have Ms. Arpita Ghosh with us today, and I'm very much looking forward to her address. I please request you to take over, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kavya, for the very generous introduction. And thank you for inviting me. I am very happy to be here, and it makes me very proud that someone is doing this initiative. Um, I think somewhat outside of the formalized institutional frameworks. So that shows real dedication and passion, and I wish you all the best in your journey.
Thank you so much.
I'm very happy to be here. Um, I am very uncomfortable with the online format simply because I don't know where to look, and I feel if I keep looking at myself, I'm talking to myself. So it would be a great help if some of you at least can turn on your cameras if you can at some point, just to encourage the poor speaker who is horrified at this point, looking at herself. I hope Kavya will stay on. I can keep looking at her. If anyone else can be so generous as to put on their videos once in a while. Uh, so I will talk about, and Matangi put it also very eloquently. I think she summed up whatever I was going to say. But I just want to do by a quick show of hands, if all of you are here. Kavya, is my voice audible completely?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, very, very quick show of hands. How many of you are postgraduate, undergraduate, or postgraduate students? Just by a quick show of hands, can we do a quick count in some way? Any reactions? I've got one. Are the others faculty members? Any students here? Postgraduate students or research scholars even? Okay, yeah, I can see Shubham. Shubham is a former student of mine. All right, great. So the reason that I'm asking is, yeah, you've got three hands so far. The reason that I'm asking is because I want to know how I'll orient my talk. I'm sure the scholars and the faculty members who are here will find that this talk to be very foundational and perhaps too basic even. But what I'm trying to really trying to achieve by the end of this talk is to be able to frame a diagnostic, uh, to read the horror text, the horror film genre as a text. And in order to do that, I want to take this not as a way of lecture, me lecturing at you, me talking at you, but hopefully some kind of interaction. I've made it as painless as possible. I'd sent along some YouTube clips earlier, and these are very common horror films that have come out in recent times. And I'm sure many of you have seen those films. Even if you haven't, even if you keep one or two horror films in mind throughout the talk, and think about what I'm trying to say, and maybe at the end of it, we'll have a collective interpretive mechanism that we can build together, that we have built together. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is that I've sent along, Kavya, have you shared the YouTube
Yes,
links?
ma'am. I've shared it
Right.
with
These
you.
are just basic trailers that I could find on YouTube, and these are films that have come out in recent times. And I had also shared a handout. And if everyone can take like 3 minutes maybe to look through the handout very quickly. Uh, Kavya, if you can put us on a timer sort of a thing, it's 56 now. In 2 or 3 minutes,
Yeah,
if
yes,
all the
ma'am.
participants, if you're
Yeah.
willing to engage in the exercise, it will be quite interactive, as I said, instead of just making this a lecture. So we could look at if you look at the handout that I've given and quickly try to sort of answer the questions, we would be able to move forward. You'll see that the handout has 3 questions primarily, and you have some guiding cues in all of the questions. What is being shown, what relations of power are suggested, and what social meanings are implied or disrupted. Very familiar questions to students of literature, because this is what we do, right? This is what we are taught. This is our bread and butter, that we can do discourse analysis, right? We look at a text critically and we are able to uh, sort of intuit through certain readings the framework behind the text, right? The architecture of the text. This is our training, literary training. So what is being shown is the first question. So in what is being shown, we'll look at the text visually, auditory, orally and auditorily. So you can see what is heard, what is seen, what the gestures are, how the space is organized. Uh, and the second more important question is, based on what is being shown, can you tell who is in a position of power within the scene, right? And this is something, again, you can tell. If someone is towering over you, they're more powerful than you, right? They're in a position of power. So who approaches, who's retreating, who is watching, who is being watched, once again. Um, and finally, what we understand from what is being shown and in what relationships are the participants in the scene, what is the social meaning that we might imply or we might read. So based on that, we'll see certain patterns of gender, right? Gender hierarchy. We'll see certain patterns of caste and class markers that keep coming up. We'll see sexuality, that's desire or propriety being controlled or, played around with, and so on and so forth. So if you have been able to do that, it's 3 minutes now. If you're comfortable, can you please write in the chat box any movie that you have in mind that I might also have watched that we can talk about specifically, or anything from the 4 films that I've shared. If you have watched any of it, can you please write in the chat box? Can we have the it? All right, it is a film based on the novel by Stephen King. All right. By a show of hands, can I have women in the room? So by a show of hands, just the women who identify as women. By a show of hands, just the women in the room. Can you please raise your hands? I'm raising mine. By a show of hands, yep, yep. can I do a quick quick quiz around the room very quickly? Kavya, can you please help me with this?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Is it like a poll or something?
No, I'm just asking you a simple question.
Okay.
Uh, in your everyday life, do you take the same routes to work? Uh, and are there certain markers in the routes where you sort of speed up or you slow down or you don't like to use those routes after night, after dark? Tell me, help me out.
I've allowed the participants to unmute themselves and talk. So if they wanted to
So,
talk, they can. Otherwise, they can put their answers in the chat box.
so. I'm asking this specifically to the women in the room, and even men are welcome to answer if they feel there are certain routes that they avoid and why they avoid certain routes after dark, or I'd love to know that as well. Kavya, you may start. Please
Yeah,
help.
please. I was wondering if I can answer or not.
No, I want you to answer. Please help me out.
If you're asking from the horror perspective,
No,
I
no,
don't.
not in a horror. This is
In
just your
general,
everyday life.
okay.
Yeah,
I usually do not take a route if it's not crowded or well lit. If it's in the night time, if it's in the daytime, I'll muster up the courage if I have to. Otherwise, I try to avoid the route. But if it's a daily commute or something, I wouldn't mind going. As long as I know I'm going to drive fast or I'm inside a car and nobody can harm me. There's always this third eye that's supposed to be open if you're a woman.
right, right. Anyone else? I can see some hands that are raised. If anyone would like to go, very happy to hear. Anyone else? Okay. So the point of asking this question is to give us another entry point. Professor Matangi gave us an entry point, right? She said horror is not so much about the supernatural, but horror is very cultural. Horror is very social. She has given us an entry point into horror as a social text. We have another response which says, I do avoid a route which goes to my native place, which is void of people. So you avoid deserted places. Um, right. Thank you, Kavya. So I think at this point, we have two entry points into our topic by now. Sorry, Kavya, how much time do we have?
Ma'am, we can go till 6:40.
Okay, okay, sure, sure. So, so the point is that we have to perhaps a way to enter into the topic today is to understand, or perhaps is to look at the idea of public space. Uh, Public space and women's access to public space is something that has always been contested, especially in the Indian context, right? Even in the past 20 years, we have seen certain shifts in the gender sexuality landscapes in India, where a lot of women have gained visibility, women have become educated, women are working, women are moving out of homes and gained a lot of mobility. But what uh, an Indian sociologist talked about in her book, co-authored with two other theorists, this I'm talking about uh, the book Loitering. This is by Shilpa Phadke, co-written with Samira Khan and Shilpa Ranade. So Shilpa Phadke in this book, uh, which is called Why Loiter, she talks about public space as being gendered. And this is what we are also able to see in the two testimonies that we just had, that women's access to public spaces is always conditional. A woman can only be in the public space If she has a reason, if she's working, great. If she's caregiving, great. Is she out to buy something? Sure. Is she traveling to go somewhere? Sure. But with men, their presence is assumed and always already, they may or may not have uh, any reason to be out and about. They might just be loitering, right? And their presence uh, is always legitimate. So if we can take this as our base, that women's presence in public spaces is always conditional, and then we look at our horror texts, then we see that any woman who is loitering, who is out and about at night without work, no purpose, must die, right? And this is where we can begin. She's out and about at night. Don't go out at night. Dress carefully. Take a cab. Be alert. Right? If any woman who is not doing these things, who's transgressing these boundaries, finds herself killed in horror movies. So let us remember that first intervention, that horror movies will discipline, or the horror texts discipline women's mobility. That is, I think, important. And and this horror, the restriction of women's freedom in horror, is not accidental, is not coincidental. It is deliberately produced. It's manufactured in the context of the society that the horror film produces. And to give you two examples, one, let us look at the films of the Ramsey brothers, the 80s era horror films, which are now considered cheap, scarce, jump cuts, bad makeup, bad CGI, and all of that. Compared to today's films, let's say take a film like Bulbul, for example, or Tumbad for another, which is sophisticated, which is not about jump scaring, but uh, is, is completely foregrounding a certain social issue. For example, in Bulbul, we have a young woman who is married off to a much older man who abuses her and sexually abuses her, who then becomes a ghostly churel-like figure, a witch-like figure. And in Tumbad, similarly, we have the inheritance of caste and class, which also function to foreground horror. Now, here is the difference that we are also trying to map. In the early 80s film, what we had was a crude form of horror. Today, the horror film is multi-layered and can very much be a very fertile ground to read race, class, caste, and gender in it. And racial horror is another topic that I'm not touching here, but you may find a lot of examples right now that which will look into racial horror. For example, the film Get Out, if you can watch that. That's a film about racial horror and the horror of being black in a white society as well. So, so for us, I think fear, which is the epistemic framework for the horror film, is something that has to be learned by the women in these films. And how do these films do that? I am going to now show my presentation, and perhaps we can walk through the presentation really quickly. I will not do a very theory heavy presentation because simply because it doesn't make for very good listening. Let me share my screen and Control L, right?
Yes,
Kavya?
ma'am. Yes,
Is that full screen now?
yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. So, if you have watched any of these films, please feel free to drop a note in the comments about how you would read gender and sexuality in these films. Sorry, give me a second. All right, so we are going to look at certain films. It's okay if you're not familiar with them. They function on certain common tropes that we can talk about. They are cultural texts that we have been saying. They are cultural texts. Horror movies are cultural texts where anxieties about gender, sexuality, race, class, nation are played out, and social order can surface in monstrous forms. What we are going to do, hopefully by the end of the talk, is be able to have a conceptual framework to understand what horror can do. Horror can externalize what society represses. And you can see in these two stills, one is from the film Tumbad, and the other one is from Bulbul. And there is no ghost as such in the films, both the films. The films portrayed here, the scenes from which the films are taken, uh, Tumbad and Bulbul, they talk about women's mobility and men's violence and caste secrecy and sexual danger and anxieties around purity. And feminist theory and queer theory have given us the tools to read these anxieties as embedded in horror imagery, right? Uh, if you're familiar with the film Tumbad, the ghastly scenes or the main scenes take place inside a womb-like structure where the men must go and uh, they must retrieve wealth, right? It becomes a symbolic place for motherhood, and we'll talk about this when we talk about Chori, for example. If anyone is familiar with the concept, and I'm sure many are, Laura Mulvey's concept of the male gaze, the concept of male gaze, where uh, the camera constantly frames female subjects as objects of desire and danger. The camera pans, takes long tracking shots. It frequently acts as patriarchal surveillance in these films. Women are followed, women are watched, women are exposed. Uh, but this is very interesting. In Bulbul, for example, uh, the gaze is reversed temporarily, momentarily. The gaze is reversed. The woman who is now the witch with bent feet is the one looking, is the one who can see. She goes atop a tree. She is the one who can surveil the forest area. Uh, the monstrous figure of the child who will become the ghost from the picture that you can see, it determines how visibility determines power. For Laura Mulvey, the camera is male because the camera is the one which is following the woman. But in the film Bulbul, what we have is a way to resist the patriarchal gaze by inverting it and instead looking at the male subjects. But is this as simple as that? Can we just say that we can, just revert the gaze and all will be well? Well, this recent film, Stree and the Stree series, Stree and Stree 2, they have also tried to do the same thing. In Stree 2, for example, we have a monster who's called the headless monster Sarkata, who literally kills women who try to escape the village, who try to escape the small town. I mean, how much more obvious could you get? Barbara Creed, in her theorization of the monstrous feminine, suggests that the Dian or the Chudel or the witch, they are all expressions of the monstrosity that patriarchy imposes on women. Because whenever they cannot control women, patriarchy cannot control women who bleed, uh, who transgress, they become the monster. So in both these films, we have female ghosts who are out to kill men, and and therefore they automatically become the monstrous feminine. And is this the way for the horror film to take then? Then shall we turn all ghosts into women, and then patriarchy is over? Is that the solution then? Well, it's not as easy. Uh, Julia Kristeva talks about abjection, and she says that horror emerges from the abject. Whatever society tries to expel in order to look good, we try to hide, the blood, decay, bodily fluids, and taboo spaces. They are all ways that society tries to sort of keep uh, the abject hidden. But the more the more that we try to keep these hidden, the more they come up. And so it's not as easy as saying that if the monster becomes a woman or the woman becomes a monster, then the gaze is reversed, as we were trying to understand through Laura Mulvey and Barbara Creed. Uh, because what escapes constantly a need signifier, even if we try to impose a need signifier, it constantly escapes. And I think Tumbad is a perfect example of what keeps escaping. Abject spaces, the haunted house, caste inheritance, greed, and gendered labor. I think abjection, if we look at abjection as a theory to understand horror today, or the horror film, Indian horror film today, we might have another cue. The horror film today is about what the society or what social order is trying to suppress. So that is another cue to understanding the horror film. Whatever you see on screen has escaped, right? And and this brings me to another theorist who talks about the panic that grips us whenever women are out or about at night. And I also I wanted to do this exercise, but I don't think we'll have the time. Uh, yeah, we won't have the time. So I was wondering how many of you, and we talked about this, right? If you try to do a mental map of where you are all day, where you go, which spaces you feel most comfortable with, uh, you will find a fear, or you'll find a geography of fear, a fear map. I would uh, I would request everyone to do this as an exercise to map our social geographies as a personal exercise from our own subjectivities, right? Because what is uh, a safe space for me might not be a safe space for you, and what you consider threatening might not feel so threatening for me. So all of our maps are very, very, different. Shubham, if you have a question, we can take it later, maybe. We'll come back
Okay,
to it.
ma'am.
Yeah, thanks. So I think I think what we are trying to now move towards slowly is to now understand what the horror film tries to hide. And in this respect, I wanted to talk about Eve Sedgwick's queer panics. Queer panics, and this is a scene from the movie Ghoul, and I absolutely love this film. This is not so much about gender and sexuality, but it is connected because this talks about masculinity, and I love the film because this to me is the Indian answer to Get Out. This to me is the Indian answer to racial horror that is now being done quite well in Hollywood. This to me is India's answer to that because this is where we see the repressive forces of state and the nation uh, try to escape once again through the ghoul in this case, the ghost, the ghostly figure, uh, which emasculates the so-called strong, uh, manly men, right? So I'm not going into the stories of please watch the film if you're interested. But what for me is interesting in this idea that Sedgwick places, and she wasn't talking about horror, but I want to talk about how she speaks about forbidden intimacies, how forbidden intimacies, queer longings, cross class desires, which are expressly forbidden in the social order, might be enabled in the horror movie. In the horror movie, the ghost has no gender. The ghost, which may have a male body, can be possessed by a female ghost and can desire a man or pursue a man. So the messiness, the chaotic uh, threat of desire that society is already afraid of, which is why we and patriarchy doesn't like queerness as such, is also something that the horror text replicates. Society is equally afraid of ghosts because ghosts do not have gender. So with that, of course, we come to my favorite theorist. We're talking about gender and sexuality. We better talk about Judith Butler. And here we have the ghostly body. And I'll keep this very short now. Butler argues, and Butler has argued about performativity of gender. We are very familiar with the discourse of gender. Gender is not natural, gender is performed. And the performative aspect of gender is what makes it seem natural. Now, once again, horror is a wonderful text or a wonderful genre to understand the performative nature of gender because in horror texts and horror films, gender cracks under social pressures. For example, in this film, Chori, we see a pregnant woman, a good pregnant woman, who is being now chased, who goes into a haunted village and is now chased throughout and is trying to save herself. This reveals the instability of gender norms. Even Bulbul, in Bulbul, and I'm referring to the text, a particular scene here, you constantly see the gender norms reversed when the woman, when Bulbul's character is constantly being abused and she can't take it anymore. She turns to, uh, she turns into the predator, right? And in that moment, gender is disrupted. And we see the good doctor, played by Parambrata Chattopadhyay in the film, who takes on the role of the caregiver. So this sort of, I think the horror text offers this sort of critical opening space, the opening for disrupting uh, uh, feminist, for disrupting the social order and for offering queer and feminist readings. Finally, and this is and we began with this. I was talking about Shilpa Phadke's Wild Loiter. And this is very important because one of the ways I think for us in India right now, and this is going to be a huge debate in the coming days, right now it already is that the gendered body is gaining more and more mobility, right? Women are gaining more and more mobility, men are Men already had that. And this is creating social fissures, right? This is creating social fissures because in India, on the one hand, we have increasing education and access to income and all of that, while we also are moving politically towards more conservative politics, right? So obviously these two things are happening simultaneously. This already happening, right? Someone like me is sitting somewhere and using technology to speak to a group sitting elsewhere, and I am a person who identifies with the female gender, and my mobility is not hindered because I also have the privilege of caste and class, right? So on the one hand, there is that, but there is also, I will also say that even as a woman who carries this privilege of caste and class with her on her body, I still find it difficult to access public toilets when I'm traveling in India, right? And so we are in a time where both of these are simultaneously happening. We are liberated, but that liberation comes at a cost, right? So women who step outside are punished. So in this film, this is a still from 3-2, where the monster kills women who go out or who are trying to escape the town. So women who step outside are punished, right? And men who cross restricted spaces are also punished because if they transgress caste boundaries. So then space becomes a very important trope in the horror film, because space is a mechanism of regulation, right? This is how you regulate. If you regulate where I can go, when I can go, and under whose supervision I can go, you have control over me, right? So I have been given the time to finish within 10 minutes, and I know my limits, and I'll work within those limits, right? So the logics of the horror film by now are something that we are sort of trying to understand so far. And a short note on the monsters that we see in horror films today, as opposed to the monsters that we saw earlier Indian films. Uh, for example, in the films three, this is what people write on the walls. They write it Ostri Kalana. This is a plea to women, to the woman ghost, to protect them, right? To protect the men. And the other one is a still from Bulbul, who kills abusive men and protects vulnerable women. So the monster then has also seen a transformation in today's horror films. In Stree, we see Stree who hunts men who wander alone at night. Remember Shilpa Phadke's idea that public spaces are accessible to men but conditional for women. Stree inverts that logic, and so men who go out alone at night are killed. And Bulbul kills abusive men because she has a history of abuse. In Tumbad, the womb-like structure and the creature punishes greed, which is tied to inheritance laws and property rights. So if we look at the monster logic, that is horror as social regulation of each of the horror films, or any horror film that you are looking at, we see how it inverts social rules. So we took Sedgwick, Eve Kosofsky Sedgwick, we took Barbara Creed, we looked at Julia Kristeva. All of these theorists taken together and combine this with monster logic, what we have is a interpretive framework for horror, right? And now let's try to sort of bring everything together. Oh, this is another film that, this is another web series that you could watch if you're not familiar. This is called Cough. And Khof is very interesting, and I will again not go into the story, but this is very fertile ground because this takes place in a woman's hostel, and you see women's hostel. The idea of a women's hostel is a very liberal idea of the modern Indian nation, where women who are away from their natal homes, which was the earlier safest place for them because patriarchy. The hostel offers an alternative site for women to pursue their own desires, their own careers, and to choose their own partners, cross class lines, caste lines, and all of those things. No wonder that this web series has chosen the hostel as a place to punish women, right? This shows women who are stuck inside a hostel. They can't leave. There is some ghostly entity. This monster is different. The ghostly entity is a male, is a man who punishes women who try to leave. So across Indian horror, we see these same structures repeating over and over again, right? Who is revealed as the monster? Uh, what is our anxiety around women moving freely? What are we really afraid of when we say that women should not go out at night, and so on and uh, so forth. And I will end my talk here today, and this is where we could easily be killed in such deserted corridors. The real fear that women have is not of ghosts, but of society and men. Horror films actually then give us the vocabulary to articulate what society refuses to name: the everyday violence, the gendered vulnerabilities, the policed desire, and even the uneven distribution of fear. I would feel afraid in a deserted corridor like this. Maybe someone able bodied, male bodied might not. So the horror text then becomes, therefore, to come back to what we started out with, what Professor Matangi also said, the horror text becomes a record of cultural anxieties, it becomes a critique of normative order, and it therefore is also a powerful tool for us as literature students to rethink distribution of vulnerability and power. All right, I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was very evocative, thought provoking in many ways that we've not seen it before. And your reading of Indian horror as a deeply social and political form, shaped by questions of gender, sexuality, historical memory, and power, is a compelling framework for us to see and the supernatural beyond what it is. And the clarity and sensitivity with which you guided us through these ideas is really very reflective.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'd love to take questions if you have the time.
We do have time, but while our participants keep typing the questions that they will have for you, I have noted few of my own to ask you. This is on a
Sure.
very lighter note.
Sure.
If you would suggest your students to just read one Indian horror text or a movie or any form of pop cultural element, what would it be?
Um, Bulbul, definitely. I think even Stree and uh, this is not horror, but something that's very interesting and very disturbing. There's this Assamese film called Amish. So that is another film. So I think even Tumbad is wonderful in terms of how in India we haven't had such a censorious, sensual portrayal of horror. I think Tumbad is one of the greatest horror films ever made in any language. So I think Tumbad, definitely. Yeah.
And there are these domestic spaces such as homes, kitchens, and ancestral houses. And these function differently in horror movies as the site of fear compared to the public spaces. So you might, it's like you're on the road and the ghost will sit on your bike and then only come to haunt you inside the house. So, how do you see that?
well, since I'm looking at general sexuality right now, but you take any lens, I think all horror is about fear, right? And fear is always epistemic. I was torn between two topics actually when you had asked me to choose an area. I knew I would talk about fear and anxiety, but my first thought was talking about climate fear and climate anxiety and fear, how it organizes our lives today. You know, we live in fear of a cold winter, we live in fear of a hot summer, we live in fear, farmers are living in fear of rain not big enough, too much rain, there are earthquakes and other disasters. Fears and anxieties around climate is something that I've been thinking about for a while. And if you take that same analogy in terms of horror, I think what horror is actually doing is also talking about the shifts in Indian society as we are living in it right now. So, as I said, we are living in very uneven times where, sure, you and I and other women in the panel today have never, none of our foremothers have experienced such freedom, I'm sure. Uh, but the challenges that we face today is also something that none of our foremothers had also ever faced, right? For the first time, we have access, conditional, sure, but access to a lot of public spaces which had been hitherto reserved for men. But what they have also brought is a huge power imbalance. We have seen many people who have been convicted of rapes argue, and their lawyers have argued in courts that she was out at 9 at night. She deserved it. Right? This is horrifying. I think that is horror. And the horror film, by foregrounding uh, this as something supernatural or something that's ghostly, merely points to a social a rupture in the social order. So I think for us right now, the horror film is very important. And the OTT business, again, OTT platforms are doing a wonderful work of, because they're uncensored, as Matangi said, so far. But I'm sure there's something that's coming up very soon. But because they're uncensored, we have a lot of like fertile ground for sort of Freudian imaginations. I can't begin to tell you what we have in Bengali OTT platforms. They're just all over the place. Very delicious, but very, very fertile ground for sensuality and sexuality and all of that. Yeah.
Uh, like coincidentally or somehow, my next question is actually related to OTT platforms. So, with the rise of digital platforms and streaming series, do you think Indian horror, um, let's maybe with in connection to gender or otherwise, has become more socially conscious or merely become visually explicit?
Sure, the visual titillation part is, of course, is there because it's easy to, because otherwise you won't get your audiences. The visual titillation part aside, or the sensationalism aside, I think the social consciousness part is borrowed from the Western context. As I said, the racial horror trope has become very pronounced in Hollywood right now. So I think we have borrowed from there, and we are not doing a very great job about it so far because again we are looking to sensationalize it. But still, a film like Ghoul, for example, which talks about the horror of so many Kashmiri men killed and disappeared, right? People don't even have their bodies. Family don't even have their bodies. So I think the horror of that, which is a reality for so many people there, uh, can only be captured through horror films because that is not something that realistic cinema or literature can ever capture. So whenever I think society has faced these ruptures, we have moved into fantasies, we have moved to surrealist texts. I think moving into horror texts for us could be a response. maybe, I mean, could be a response to the very confusing times. And I think we're also afraid to say right now because of the regimes and all. So perhaps horror could be a good outlet to say, "वो तो भूत था." I mean, the ghost did it. I did not. So that sort of thing, maybe.
This is something that I've observed over the years. Earlier, the ghost would either be a male in a monstrous form or it'll be a female that gets into a woman's body. But in the recent times, I see that there's a lot of freedom than realism when it comes to addressing taboo subjects, which are actually not. But when it comes to sexuality, violence, or dissent in Indian construct within movies, these are easily accepted. Maybe people think that horror isn't, I mean, something related to ghosts are not real. So if you put in these topics or these subjects into a horror movie, then people wouldn't come up with a lot of questions or protests, and they'll just enjoy the movie and get out. I've seen this in, I'm not sure if you've seen this movie called Kanchana. It's a Tamil horror film, and the ghost is a transgender. And I've never seen anybody telling like, how can you imagine a ghost to be a transgender? Why is it not a boy like it was in the previous version? No questions asked. So it's becoming an easier ground for people to present LGBTQ subjects. I think, I don't know, but what is your comment on that?
No, I understand where you're coming from, but I would disagree to say that this has already been done, in the sense of for the longest time, queer people were shown as pathological in Hollywood films. They were serial killers. They were, you know, uh, psychopaths, etc. So I don't think this is new, and this actually plays into the. So this is where what I was talking about, in the move can seem uh, liberatory by making the ghost uh, cross gender lines, but it also runs the danger of exactly this. Uh, I remember some film in Bollywood which had the villain as the trans person. The trans person was the villain. Transgender person was the trans woman. That is, and that is a very easy uh, sort of collapsing of categories. So I think there is a real danger to that as well. Too. I mean, we already think of trans people as confused or trans people as evil. So to say that they can be ghosts is not really a big deal. It also runs the danger of confirming some bias that we might already have. So yeah, so I think it's a very double-edged sword that we are talking about. Yeah.
I think we had a question or a comment from Shubham Majumdar earlier. So if he is willing to unmute and ask away, we can have him do that.
Good evening, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yep,
Yes.
yep, you are.
Uh, First of all, thank you, ma'am, for such an interesting talk. And I just want to share a very strange, it's not strange, it's a gendered reality shaped by patriarchal power. Uh, it's uh, an experience associated with space, which you were talking about. Uh, of how boys and girls perceive or they are made to perceive the same street near my university at night. The same space that feels safe and secure to boys become for girls a place of fear, a space where there is the possibility of molestation and verbal harassment by local men. Uh, so, what appears ordinary and harmless during the day turns into a street associated with danger after dark, one that women are advised not to visit alone at night. While the boys, we, while the boys can roam freely even at midnight without fear, but the girls are unable to do so safely even after evening. So, I just wanted to share this.
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you. And I was saying this. I mean, if there's one thing that you take back from this today is that please map your the spaces that you inhabit and see which areas are no-go zones at what times. As Shubham pointed out, the same place that is safe in the day will become unsafe for someone. So the horror film, in that sense, is not about who is scary, but the question is who is it scary for? For women, the night and a deserted road is scary. And this shows us the socio-political nature of spaces. So that is what I really wanted to do as an exercise as well. And you can do this on your own as well. Just map out your locality, talk to women, other women, because even as I said, I might not find it very unsafe, but my student, a female student, will find it unsafe, right? Because of our power positions in society and so on and so forth. So thank you for that acknowledgement of how spaces can be so gendered, Shubham. Yeah.
So do we have any other questions from the participants or anything for you to share? You're more than welcome to unmute and then share it with us now.
Do you watch a lot of horror films?
I do, but of late I've actually stopped because I wanted to have some peace of mind and lower my cortisol level. I'm a diehard fan of horror, thriller, crime fiction. I would suggest you to watch this Mindhunter series on Netflix.
I have, yeah, yeah.
I usually use this as my go-to conversation if I want to make friends with anybody. Watch Mindhunter, then we'll have a discussion.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I love the nuanced layering of the characters. Oh, this is Trishna. Trishna is saying that, oh, I agree with you, Trishna. I used to avoid watching horror films as a child because I think there's some, reminiscent child in us who used to watch something and then I couldn't sleep at night and all of that. So for the longest time, didn't watch. And then one day something broke, the dams broke, and I started with the Insidious movies and uh, and some those sort of chain Hollywood chain movies, and I haven't been able to stop. And it is around that time that Kavya approached me for a talk, and I was in my horror era. So I was just watching back to back horror movies at that point, and I was looking at them as texts at what Krishna says. The lens to view them when you this is also very yeah thing. If we start to intellectualize things, there's the danger of over intellectualizing them. But I think it's important for horror and it's interesting to do as an exercise. So yeah, thank you, Krishna. Please watch horror movies and and look at them through various lenses. Caste is a very important lens in for anyone who's looking to do their research. Please look at race and caste as emergent horror tropes. I think that's an area that needs to be explored more. Caste, nation, community, especially in the Indian context. Please watch and please look at other texts. So, yeah. I think we are done, Kavya.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. I mean, in all studying aura and bringing a lot of intertextuality into this and the study of literature has been really new for me. I've not attended a session or heard of anyone talk of this before, so it was really mind-opening for me. And thank you for sharing all that knowledge that you had. And for anybody who's generally up to appreciate a movie or criticize it or just watch it for the sake of relaxation, they would watch it in a different perspective maybe from now on. Thank you so much for this, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Kavya. Yeah. Thank you to everyone for being here. Yeah.
And with
All
this,
right.
we come to the end of today's session. Thank you for joining us and sharing your time with us. For now, I have some information to pass on with the participants. Ma'am, you're most welcome to stay with us if your schedule permits. Otherwise, I completely understand if you need to take your leave.
No, I'll take you leave. Yeah. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.